ago, and he really bootstrapped it. And he had told me this story about going to a conference where he didn't have enough money to pay for the ticket to get to the conference, and he kind of snuck himself in. And at that conference, he met Mindy Grossman, the head of Home Shopping Network, and it changed his life. So now he's in, thousands and thousands and thousands of stores around the globe, and it's a very successful natural line. But it's really built on a defined brand that's all about optimism. So Yes To is all about kind of choosing things in your life, being optimistic, being natural. And so it was one that I just wanted to highlight because I think, one, it's entrepreneurial, it was really passion driven, and showing that you can go in and reinvent a category where you'd think a cosmetic or a skincare line, like that seems overwhelming, right? But he and his business partner went in and did it. So great, great products. I use the Yes To blueberries. I'm a loyal blueberry user.
That sounds great. And so we're giving away 2 of these packages. So the first one is going to Lee Kariuki, who entered on Facebook. And Lee's quote was, "A brand is a summary of all the thoughts and feelings one has about your identity." Great summary. And the second
stage you are in and where people can find you online.
So I am actually from this area, born and raised, and I live in North Bend currently, but find myself in Bellevue most of the time or in Seattle. And I recently started Seattle's first monthly fashion magazine, and it's Poshy, P-O-S-H-Y, and you can find it at poshymagazine.com.
Fantastic. Well, we are excited to have you along with us. All right, Porter, over to you.
Great. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad that you're here. So, Mike.
Objectives in quotes. It's like, what do we want our prospect to think when they see the name? Oh, this is cool. Oh, it's sexy. Oh, this is educational. Oh, it's fun. And I need to find out more. And then, secondly, you want to set the parameters. If you're a pure play in in the internet space, then having the URL is very, very important. In other cases, it's not as important. You want to understand the regionality. Are you going to go globally? So you need to understand whether it's going to be, whether you want it translated into major foreign languages, or if it might mean something untoward in major foreign languages.
You've had thoughts about, should I change my name? And, when do you decide to stick with a name versus changing a name? So maybe if you want to give us a little bit of background on how you picked the name and where you're at with your company with the name.
Well, honestly, I just picked my name because of the URL. It was because we're a digital magazine, the URL is extremely important. And so I wanted to make sure that we had something that was available. And we wanted it to mean posh. And so same thing, I just kind of made up a word. And although it is not a made-up word, it is in the dictionary. Poshy does mean posh, but
ending a new brand, so RN74, there's one here in Seattle, and they didn't link the names because they wanted to keep it separate. So it actually, it made sense at that time period, but now, several years later, the economy has come back, and it's, 2013. It's like, oh, wait a second, that's a Michael Mina restaurant, and so now we have to go back and figure out how do we reattach the name. So I think that, you said something before, is it your company name, is it a portfolio name? You need to figure out, your roadmap, are you going to have multiple products? Jeff, I wanted to talk a little bit about your business too, because again, we had a pre-call. Your business is Golden Goods. What you explained to me is that
as opposed to coming up with a sub-brand underneath it. I guess the question is are there any negatives of doing that versus taking the Michael Mina approach? And because RN74 is just a special restaurant as Michael Mina, yet he chose to do a sub-brand.
Right. It is just as special a restaurant, but it's because people know that it's probably associated with him, or that they've gone, they've visited, and they've had a wonderful experience. In your case, it sounds as though a potential your audience might buy a T-shirt both for themselves and contemporariness versus old-fashionedness, or in age. If they really started to diverge, I think at that point, then you've got a very interesting dilemma. Do you say, well, do we have two separate brands? Which brand gets which audience, or do we do some sort of sub-brand or line extension, Golden Goods 2 or Golden Goods by Jim or Golden Goods for business?
It's interesting you just said the last thing, because one of the pieces of advice from somebody I have a tremendous amount of respect for in terms of naming and such is, he said, make it,
who are within your core group, feedback on it, and then there's other ways to do that too. Focus groups are still pretty effective, although time consuming and expensive and not necessarily quantitative, and there are other surveys. So I think that you go both with your gut and with some analytics, and at the end of the day, between all of the different resources, you say, okay, I think this is the one that we're going to go with. I would caution in all of that, it's less about who you talk to, and I think more about how you structure the question, which is basically, I would suggest, don't say which one do you like. I would say, okay, here's what I'm trying to achieve, here's my objective, give them some back.
So doing buying keywords or doing ad tests where they'll test them and they'll actually see where they're getting more click-throughs. That's definitely a more analytical way to go through, but I've heard people testing, subheads, copy offers, that kind of thing. So there are little things that you can do.
Well, and just to put a finish on this, I mean, maybe one thing for us to consider is to try to thread the needle with both, where you get the brand tie to the overall company Golden Goods, but there's some sort of an amplification that says that this is something different, unique, highly specialized and consumer focused. And not saying we would do this, but
Consumer